Hey y'all, it's your host Jubitaz, and today I'm here to talk about everyone's favorite blonde artistic terrorist, Deidara. More specifically, I wanted to talk about how underrated he is. And I'm not talking about character popularity, but power scaling. Deidara is actually pretty broken, and his hacks abilities give him at least one win con against most of the people he'd go up against, but due to the battles he partakes in, and due to the fact that he was massively nerfed by Kishimoto during the war, more on that later, he gets brushed off in most versus battles. I've seen him get called low Kage, weakest Akatsuki. I've actually seen this crazy list that said that he couldn't even beat Aoba. Yeah, after reading this list, it made me realize how desperately needed this video is. So today, I'm gonna be discussing Deidara's strengths and weaknesses and how he was shafted in the war arc by the author himself. If you like what you see, then hit that bell and let's not waste any time. I want to start off by saying that when people say that Deidara's in the weaker tier in the Akatsuki, that usually has more to do with the others being so overwhelmingly strong than Deidara being an inept shinobi. But even then, Deidara doesn't fall far from the Akatsuki's league. And he was actually personally sought out by the Akatsuki because his talents were considered very useful. And when you think about it, Deidara was pretty instrumental to the Akatsuki. He did capture two-tailed beasts pretty much by himself. Deidara has a range of clay bombs, a Keke Genkai, that allows him to make his chakra explosive. These attacks are categorized by chakra levels. The C1 are the standard clay bombs that resemble small animals like birds, bats, or spiders. The C1 can also be used for larger birds that Deidara can ride and fly on. Their explosive power is the lowest level of Deidara's bombs, but it's nonetheless effective. The C2 dragon is a step up, as the dragon can spit out landmines, so that Deidara's enemy has to traverse landmines while dodging heat-seeking missiles released from the dragon's mouth, shaped like smaller dragons, and pack a much more powerful punch than the C1. The C2 projectile was able to decimate Sasuke's wing in his Curse Mark II state. And then we get to the C3, Deidara's city leveling bomb. When the bomb is activated, it expands in size before being dropped, where it extends both its arms outwards. According to the databook, its explosion is the highest level of scale and can destroy an entire village. The C3 is still nothing compared to the C4 Karura. After eating the clay and regurgitating it, Deidara creates a massive replica of himself, and once the giant Deidara pops, a swarm of microscopic miniature bombs are released into the atmosphere. The idea is that once an organism inhales these bombs, they disintegrate him from the inside out. This is usually considered Deidara's trump card and can give him the dub against most of the opponents he'd go up against, even if they're stronger than him. Heck, the one reason Sasuke was able to detect those bombs is because he has the Sharingan and could see the miniature bombs as a cloud of chakra. So unless you're a really skilled sensor, you're not even gonna know about them until you're getting bombed from the inside out. However, this is only Deidara's most versatile bomb. His strongest, in terms of just sheer power, is the C0, his self-destruct last resort attack, if you will. When Deidara resorts to using his chest mouth, he needs chakra that comes directly from the meridians of his heart and continues to do so without interruption until the explosion occurs, where the user and everything in his vicinity are vaporized. The explosion covers a 10-kilometer radius, so the only way to truly escape it is by teleporting away. And that's it for Deidara's C-variant bombs, but not his abilities. He's also able to create clay clones without having to wave hand signs, which is pretty useful. He's not really a pro at Genjutsu or Taijutsu, but he's not a slouch either. He trained his left eye to counter basic Sharingan Genjutsu. I know he gets caught by it later, but at least he was able to see through it the first time. And the second time he was mostly caught off guard by how Sasuke was able to survive the C4 in such close combat. Taijutsu is also not his specialty, since he's mostly a long-range fighter that flies and just bombs his enemies to smithereens. But even then, when he loses both his arms and gets ambushed by Team Guy, he's still able to hold them off for a bit, and it's implied that he's fighting them off with a kunai in his mouth, since he's got no arms to hold the kunai. It's pretty hilarious. And Team Guy is the taijutsu team, so for him to hold his own, even for a bit, against Team Guy when he has no arms is actually pretty impressive. People will bring up the Gaara fight and the whole Gaara ripping his arm off and Deidara having to resort to bomb the village to distract Gaara as some sort of anti-feat, when it's really not. The fight definitely implied some relativity, but you have to remember that Deidara couldn't go all out against Gaara because the Akatsuki are tasked with capturing the Jinchuriki alive, so he couldn't use the C4 or his stronger hacks. You also have to remember that he's fighting Gaara in his own turf, which means that Gaara could use as much sand as he likes, and that's why Deidara has to resort to turning his home field advantage into a disadvantage by using the village as collateral. This is also not giving Deidara the tactical praise he deserves. How he was able to determine that Gaara's quicksand was different, planted some of his bombs there when his arm was crushed, and then gave him no other choice than to protect himself using that sand, and then penetrating the ultimate defense. He also managed to defeat Gaara while simultaneously dealing with all of the Sand Village's military. Sasori didn't do shit, he just let Deidara deal with them all. Speaking of Sasori, the statement that Deidara makes about Sasori being stronger than him is also a major point of downplay, even though Deidara said this just to scare Kakashi to help Sakura and Chiyo out. Now Deidara versus Sasori is a whole topic, but what I'm saying is that Deidara's statement alone isn't enough to say he's weaker than Sasori, based on the context it was used in. Now against Sasuke, it's a very different situation. First off, let's not downplay Heavy Sasuke. He was considered to be even more of a genius than Orochimaru by Orochimaru himself, and he was amped by the Curse Mark and the White Snakes. On top of all that, it's almost like Sasuke's arsenal was specifically made to hard counter Deidara. You see, Deidara's kryptonite is lightning attacks, something that Sasuke was extremely proficient in. Sasuke's Chidori stream was the perfect counter to the C4, since he can run lightning through his body to disable the microscopic bombs. And on top of that, the Sharingan not only can be used to detect the C4 bombs, but it's how Sasuke figured out that lightning was his weakness in the first place. That's why I said the C4 was an ender for most shinobi that can't run lightning chakra throughout their body, unless they're like exceptionally skilled sensors that can detect the nano-sized bombs and evade them, or they have over-the-top regeneration abilities that could just handle the sheer effect of the bombs. So Sasuke, the Raikage, Kakashi, Sharingan users, and maybe Hashirama could survive the C4, but the rest are honestly fair game. That's the thing about Deidara, he's not necessarily the strongest, but given his insane hacks and his ability to become airborne, makes him a challenge for even the highest of Kage level opponents. Remember that as a nerfed Edo, he was still able to keep up with the Tsuchikage, and he also revealed that he may have a different, more efficient method of using the C4. Even the series writer Masashi Kishimoto praised Deidara and implied that he could be the deadliest Edo Tensei. To recite the exact quote, "Out of Kabuto's army, Deidara is my favorite character. Honestly, I think the reanimation could make him the deadliest character because he can come back to life after he uses his special power to explode himself. I really like Deidara as a character." End quote. So that's basically Kishimoto admitting that Deidara could have been the most broken reanimated ninja, because he can basically spam C0 without repercussions. So why didn't Kishimoto make him use any of his hacks abilities when he was an Edo? Well, it's something I like to call the arrogance nerf. You see, characters like Sai and Kankuro, who've been basically taking L's all Shippuden, needed some redemption. And that's why Kishimoto gave them the win against characters that far exceeded them in terms of power, that being Deidara and Sasori. Sasori wasn't revived with any of his puppets, so his nerf is a lot more substantial. But Deidara got the arrogance nerf, that he decided to just toy with the surprise attack division and torment Sai by using his brother as an explosive, instead of just ending them there and then. Cause Deidara was more than capable of ending them all, and he doesn't even need to use the C0 for that. If he dropped the C3 down on them, or the C4, heck, even the C2 would have done more damage, but no, Deidara had to be a dick. And once he's about to use the C0, he gets pierced with a lightning sword that renders his explosives useless. Because he wasn't a morally gray character like Itachi and Nagato, Kishimoto didn't really make Deidara as strong and dangerous as he rightly should have been as an Edo, which is why I believe that Deidara is a lot stronger than you remember, and if it wasn't for plot, he would have been one of the strongest Edos alongside Nagato, Itachi, and the 6th Jinchuriki.